good evening, everyone. Welcome to our lockdown series brought to you by the Himalayan Institute of Cultural and Heritage Studies in Katra in Kullu Valley. And today we have Professor Aditya Malik, who will be talking about tales of justice and rituals of divine embodiment, which is such a fascinating topic. To give a brief introduction, Professor Malik has held senior academic and administrative positions. He's currently the Vice Chancellor of K.R Mangalam University. He has received academic training in classical modern Indian studies, philosophy, archaeology, and history, our favorite subjects. And he has received academic training from the South Asia Institute of the University of Heidelberg, Germany, where he received his PhD and habilitation, and so much more. I'm sure, there's so much more to it. And of course, he belongs to a family of archaeologists, and he's an anthropologist. So I'm so happy that I have gotten in touch with you, thanks to Dr. Kapila, and I'm really looking forward, as all of us, to listen to you today. So over to you, Dr. Malik. And I'll put you on the speaker mode, and we can now put all our videos off so that we have a good bandwidth.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Sonali, for introducing me and inviting me to the lockdown series. Fascinating title. And also thank you to Dr. Anjali Kapila for suggesting that I speak at this venue, and thank you and welcome to everyone who's come to listen to this talk from different parts of India and different parts of the world, as far as I understand, as far as UK, Netherlands, and my daughter from Christchurch, New Zealand. So this sort of a platform itself provides a different kind of scope and breadth of reaching out and communicating with people all over the globe. Sonali's already shared the title of my talk, which is Tales of Justice and Rituals of Divine Embodiment. And this is in fact the title of a book that I published 4 years ago in 2016. It was published by Oxford University Press in New York. And then it was reprinted in 2018 in a South Asia edition in Delhi. And so it's some work that has been completed about 4 years ago, for which I spent several years doing field work in Uttarakhand, in certain parts of Uttarakhand, which I'll be telling you about briefly. I spent about 8 or 9 years doing field work in the summer vacations that I had when I was teaching in New Zealand. That's in the months of December and January and the end of November. And I stayed in a beautiful town called Mukteshwar, actually Sargakhet, in my father's house, Professor S.C. Malik. And I was introduced to one of the deities, the main deity that I'll be talking about today, Goludevji, by a mutual friend, Manoj Mehra, who has a kind of a cottage and a bungalow there, and he invites students and other people to come and stay with him during these summer months. So I gradually started to visit some of the temples in the surrounding areas, particularly near Bhavali and Almora and Champavat, and I'll be showing you some slides and a map shortly, so you get an idea of where I did my field work and what this. I'll be telling you about what sort of field work I did and the kinds of questions that once I started to enter into the material that I was witness to and that I participated in, the kinds of questions that began to arise, and that's some of the things that I'd like to share with you. There's a lot of material that I collected, many stories, many narratives, and I participated in many hours of what is called a jagar, which are rituals of what scholarship usually calls possession, which is something that I also want to talk about and in a sense also critique and investigate or interrogate the word itself, possession, and what that suggests and what the implications are for using that. So I spent a lot of time, in the temples, but also in people's homes and the devotees of some of the deities that I'll be talking and introducing you to. and understanding many things, why people want to participate in these rituals, why they go to the temples, because these temples are concerned with the god of justice, Goludev, the primary deity that I'll be talking about, and also one of the presiding deities in Uttarakhand, in Kumaon particularly, is the god of justice, nyāy Devta. So one thing that started to fascinate me and attract my attention was what exactly does that mean to be a god of justice, and what actually is justice here in this context? Because clearly, there's so many ideas and notions and practices surrounding justice, particularly when you live in a sort of in a modern, democratic state. That's one of the main institutions of a nation state, is the institutions of justice. But there's particular ideas behind that, how you conduct courts and what justice means, and so on and so forth. And in India, there have been also many ideas in texts, in the Dharma Shastras, for example, of what justice can mean. And many scholars, some great scholars, for example, Amartya Sen and, others have written about the idea of justice. So clearly sort of, entering into this field work, and which was fascinating and intense and very powerful, became more and more interested in what constitutes justice, and what is it that people and devotees and those who may not even be devotees of Goludev directly, what are they looking for? What do they actually want? And why would they go to a temple to seek out justice and not go to, a secular court for seeking out justice? And why would they participate in rituals of what I call rituals of embodiment, in which a deity enters the body, so to speak, the body as a carrier, for a deity or a spirit, could be a malevolent spirit as well, to be able to, participate in these rituals, to be able to uncover and again establish, justice in their lives. So what does that all mean? So maybe I'll just to give you a sense and then come back to these questions, and certainly we can talk about it more in the discussion. Try and share a screen with you. Let's see how. Is it working, Sonali?
Not as yet.
Okay, sorry.
Now it is.
Okay, I have to see it. I'm not able to see it right now.
It's the video. I have. If you're showing the video right now.
No. I want to show the PowerPoint. Is the PowerPoint coming up?
Not as yet. The video now. I think you can click on the PowerPoint. Yes.
I did click on it and it's up on my screen, but
yes, it's up on our screen also.
Yeah, we can see it. We can see it.
You can see it? Okay, thank you. All right, I'll just see if I can get it into a large screen. Slideshow. Okay, is it now on the screen?
Yes, it's on the screen.
All right.
Yeah, it's full screen. It's okay. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So this, just to give you a sense of where I did my fieldwork, and sorry, this still says Uttaranchal. This is a little outdated. So I did my fieldwork, and again, it was centered around, the temples and the sort of the spread of particularly of Goludevji in these districts, in Almora and Nainital, and then Champavat, which borders on Nepal. And there's many stories about how the deities, in Kumaon sort of traverse the borders and boundaries of Kumaon and Nepal, which in fact, in the 19th century were quite fluid. Just to sort of get you into the mood, although I'm sure, all of you working in Himalayan studies don't need to get in the mood. Some pictures of the very high peaks that I was able to see during my fieldwork. A few more photos here. So as I was saying, I was looking at, particularly at Goludev, and he has, several other names, Goria, Golju, Goel, and Nyayaka Devta, and there are other Nyayakari Devtas in this region. Some of whom, stories that I also collected and recorded, who also appeared in the Jagars that I was participating. Those are, Gangnath and Kalbisht. And in some other areas of Kumaon, there's also Naulak, Katyur, and Bhairav. Again, these deities are supposed to be, concerned with what is called nyāy. And one of the questions is, what does nyāy mean in this context? What is the understanding that people have of nyāy? So again, these are the deities concerned with nyāy called Nyayakari Devtas, and I was particularly concerned with and paying attention to Goludevta, to his stories, to his temples, to the petitions that are offered in his name, and to the jagars that are also conducted, in Goludevta's name. So the jagar has this is a very, basic format that I'm showing you for a jagar. It involves a jagariya or a singer. And the jagariya usually tells in a very intense way, and I'll show you a short video clip of a jagar in a very intense manner, the story of the deity. And it's the story itself and the way in which the story is told that awakens the deity, that is, awakens the deity in the body of the Dangariya or Nachnewala or the Devta, who is also, a designated person during the jagar. So both the Jagariya and the Dangariya are, in a sense, designated. But what happens during a jagar, and this is again very, interesting and fascinating, is that people who are listening, they could be family members or they could be friends or someone like me who comes from outside and participates in a jagar, could also, so to speak, fall into a trance and be, quote unquote, possessed by either a deity or by some other spirit, which may not be known at that point of time. So although there's someone who's designated, the Dangariya, to actually embody the deity, it often happens that other people also, begin to tremble and dance and show the symptoms of some spirit or perhaps a ghost or a deity having entered their body. And then there's the host of the session. And so what happens during a jagar, just to give you some more detail, a little bit more detail, is that the Jagariya tells the story, and usually the stories involve, for example, also in the story of in Goludev and Gangnath and Kalbisht, which I worked on, they all involve some form of injustice that individuals have experienced, either during their childhood or when they were adults. So this is the case for Goludev. And if you're interested, I can tell you the story later on if we have time. Also for Gangnath and also for Kalbisht. So there's some form of injustice, usually very violent. In the cases of Kalbisht and Gangnath, they both die prematurely and then appear in devotees' dreams to be established in some shrine or some temple and begin to be worshipped. In the case of Goludevta, it's different, the story, but also there's a sort of injustice and violence that he experiences as a child. So that seems to be also very critical in understanding how these deities become Nyayakari Devtas, having experienced or having understood and known some form of anyaya or injustice in their own experience and in their own lives, which is again something that devotees and all of us can relate to. So the Jagariya, tells the story, and he uses. I'll show you briefly, what happens during a jagar, and then proceeds to have a sort of a dialogue with the Dangariya. So the Jagariya, I was told by the really wonderful singers that I worked with that they were like, they had to explain things to me because I didn't quite understand, or they thought, and they were right, that I was not understanding what they were saying. So they said they were more like movie directors. They had everything in control. So the Jagariya really has everything that's going on in a jagar in control. So he's able to control the devta in a sense. He's able to awaken the devta, but also able to control, in a sense, the movements of the devta and also what the devta says. So it proceeds in the form of a dialogue, and the purpose of the jagar is to actually understand something in the, say, the family of the host who are facing certain issues. This could be with regard to property, or oftentimes it's regard to one's own well-being and health, illness that cannot be diagnosed. Or, a family or an individual has tried out many things. They've gone to doctors, they've done MRIs, they've visited allopathic, Ayurvedic, a whole variety of what is available in terms of healing, and yet nothing is working. So then, you would actually call a jagar to find out, because the devta has access to a kind of knowledge that you and I don't have in our normal everyday experience, which is limited by the sort of horizon, you could say, of knowledge that we exist and operate inside of. So to then ask, so the devta has asked, why is this happening? What is the reason for this particular illness or this long-standing, let's say, property dispute? If the devta can provide an insight into why it's happening, a kind of diagnosis into what's happening, and also, what can be done in terms of, sort of resolving whatever that particular issue is that family or individual is dealing with. So oftentimes it's about, what the jagar is about revealing something that is hidden. And there's many things that are, hidden in our own lives, even in the lives of people who live in cities or who are urban dwellers, who are educated, who, operate out of rationality and reason and so on. Our everyday lives are so complex, and there are so many converging intentions that it is difficult to see why certain things happen. So we, in fact, all live in this kind of condition or state of uncertainty and unpredictability, no matter how much we try and create a predictable world around us. And I think one of the strivings of so-called modern societies is to create a predictable world that is based around rationality and reason and so on. And also the idea that human beings primarily have access to knowledge, and also to what scholars like talking about, this business of agency. So that, we can come back to talk about that. So the jagar actually, is an intervention or an interruption, you could say, into this notion of as a person or as an individual being able to know what exactly is going on with you or with someone else. So it's revealing something that is hidden causes that you and I cannot actually see or don't have the perception or the insight or the knowledge for. And these hidden causes may be not directly related, for example, to what I have done. It could be something that, my grandparents have done that is now showing up in my life. So there's a kind of a genealogy, of causality, and it's not necessarily linear, and it's not just limited to the sphere of my own action or the sphere of my own thoughts and desires and intentions and so on, but the spheres of people who are around me who are maybe no longer alive, that actually shows up then in my own life. So jagar is, it's an awakening, but it's also a process of unconcealing or revealing something that lies hidden, that causes certain kinds of maybe suffering or pain or impediments and hindrances in our own lives. So that's sort of in a nutshell what happens during jagar. And then the second way in which, devotees, and you need not be a devotee, anyone could go there to the temple. And in fact, there are many people from other parts of India. In fact, I even saw that there was someone from Kerala, who'd seen, and this is very interesting because we're doing this, online, who'd seen a video about Goludevji, who then, offered a petition or an appeal to Goludevji from Kerala. And of course, many people come up from the plains and the surrounding area. So it's not limited, in a sense, Guru Devta's power and influence is not limited to just some parts of Kumaon. So I'll be showing you some slides in which you can actually see what these, petitions, manoti or faryad, or petition or appeal actually look like. Often there are on, many of them are on stamp paper, which gives them a kind of a quasi-legal, at least appearance. And the language is often devotional, and it's addressed to the deity. And many times I found that there's the signature of a witness, which gives it a kind of an official, the sense of being an official document like you would hand in a court, in a secular court, that are then hung up in the in the temples of Goludevta, in the different temples, and particularly in the temple in Almora, the temple of which is called Chittai in Almora. I'll just go back to the map, which is somewhat clear. So here in Almora, just outside of Almora, there's one of the larger or more important temples of Goludevta. So there's one in Almora, there's one in near Bhavali in Nainital, near Nainital, and there's one in Champavat. And these temples, devotees, if you ask them, they use, a nomenclature that is actually borrowed from, or that is used more in secular courts. And these are, English terms that have been used. So then Almora is the Supreme Court of Goludevta, Nainital is the High Court, and Champavat is the District Court. So in fact, these petitions are being hung in the courts, Darbar, Dev Darbar of Goludevta. And what do these petitions concern? What are people writing about? They may be on stamp paper, but they may just be short, small handwritten notes that are hung in the midst of hundreds and thousands of brass bells that are votive offerings that are given to the deity, that are offered to Goludevta once certain issues or whatever devotees are dealing with are resolved. So you'll see that briefly. You'll see that shortly in the slides that I'm going to show you. So what are the petitions about? Many, many, many different things. All kinds of things that concern us in our everyday existence. Even things like passing examinations, or getting married, or conversely getting divorced, or property issues, being successful in a business, all kinds of aspirations that human beings have, but also letters, in a sense, that are very, very intimate. They're intimate at the same time, they are public documents for anybody to go and read, and for someone doing field work also to go and read without any restriction. So sort of autobiographical notes in which women particularly, talk about their situation in their families and domestic abuse through either a husband or mother-in-law or sister-in-law, and what their situation is. And they're very, candid and intimate, and opening themselves up and requesting the deity to do something about it, to undertake something about this. The petitions, as petitions are and appeals are, they are kind of expression of surrender. To surrender or surrender to the deity. And it's through this surrender that, a kind of experience and a condition of intimacy is created with the deity, through which then the deity, is an instrument to resolve whatever issues that individual is facing. So these letters are also a way of expressing oneself, to show what's been going on, social injustice. I've put it up there, one of the points. For example, some of the petitions are talking about how an individual is being discriminated against based on his or her caste. And many other things, as I said, particularly property disputes, which is something that is also, very central to what happens in Jagars, how you resolve a property dispute or long-standing property disputes. And then things like that we all are concerned with, and why I keep saying we all are concerned with, because oftentimes, in scholarship, and this is what I've encountered, after having, taught in Germany and in New Zealand, and that there is, particularly in scholarship and academia, there's a distinction made between what is called modernity, or modern societies in which we all participate, whether we like that or not, or whether we resist it, or whether we're critical of it or not. We are, at least most of the people on this platform, are participating in some form of what we can call, modernity. We participate in very, large, in terms of large structures, democratic nation state and its institutions that are considered to be parts of, or, the foundations of, also of modernity. Things like rationality, reason, being able to sort of chalk out the direction or the destiny that one's life is going to take, having things, in one's own hands. This is very modern notion that one is the sort of the master or the driver of one's own destiny. So yes, to come back to why I'm saying that we all participate in this, is to actually then to bridge the gap, and to rather than think of modern and pre-modern and of course postmodern. This is another thing altogether. That at any point of time, different ways of thinking and acting are existing simultaneously. And this, I think, becomes very important, because oftentimes when I've given talks about Goludevji, or shown people video clips about the Jagas, or talked about the petitions, there is a great deal of skepticism, and there's skepticism also from within. I'm not saying this is skepticism that comes out of urban contexts. There's skepticism also in Kumaon amongst people. That what is this? This is just all some kind of a fake, or some pretense of some kind, and so on. Or people are surprised that these sort of institutions or rituals and so on are still being conducted, in our so-called, modern era. How can people still be doing this? So one of the things that I've attempted to do in my book is to try and show how we're all, the human condition is one of unpredictability and uncertainty in a fundamental manner. And that we all exist within certain horizons of thinking and acting and speaking, and are somehow contained or restricted by that horizon, which is not always visible to us. We are not always privy to what the horizon is. And therefore we encounter many things that happen that surprise us, that create a rupture in the everyday flow of our existence. And this happens everywhere. And it's really a question of how human beings respond to that, and what are the ways they find to respond to that through their own experience, or through adopting certain kinds of practices. And oftentimes also, when people are sort of in a situation where they can't move forward, even people who are in sort of urban contexts, they resolve to looking at things that are beyond the purview of rationality or reason and so on. Many of us, all of us do that when it comes down to very difficult situations. So this wanting to achieve justice, again, we have to come back to think about, and we can do that in the discussion. What does justice mean here? Can we talk about justice in terms of personal well-being and fulfillment? What if I began to live a life that is fulfilling and satisfied? Is that an aspect of justice? Not to have that kind of life, for example. Not to have a life that is fulfilled in relationships or in terms of accomplishment. Is that a form of injustice? So certainly the petitions seem to point towards that, seem to point towards a kind of, or suggest that we need to broaden our understanding of what encompasses justice, rather than say this is something that happens, in Kumaon, or happens in Uttarakhand or in the Himalayas, which is a particular cultural region, and they have their own practices. Now, these are sort of practices and ways of responding that human beings in living in certain cultures and human societies have. And they participate simultaneously in other ways and other practices that we encounter, in so-called secular courts or through forms of medicine, allopathic medicine, surgery, MRIs, and so on. And people are participating in all of these, not exclusively in either or. All right, let me move on to show you some slides now. So this is a temple that I, did most of my field work in this temple and around this temple in Ghoda, Khal, which is in, near Bhavali in Nainital district. And as you can see there, everything has significance. We can talk about, the tree and the shrine. The temple is it's very small. And there's a, very interesting story about how the temple originated in this particular space and place. And you can see thousands of bells that have been hung all around. The temple and the trees are festooned by these beautiful brass bells, which devotees offer, once you go to the temple and then you ask Goludevji for something, could be anything that concerns that your desire, you offer a bell. That's one of the ways of showing your gratitude. Here again, this is another view of the temple. Is very small. You can see like it's very low, so you almost have to, hunch down while moving around to come to the main part. These are just some scenes from the temple compound. This is, I think, one of the priest's nephew. I think that's his grandmother who's, giving him some advice. And this is the main shrine of Goludevji. And here you can see Goludevji who's on his horse, his wooden horse. Again, this is related to the birth story of Goludevji. And he's accompanied by Kalinga Mata, or Kalika Devi, Kalinga Mata, who is his mother. Again, she is very central to the story and his birth, and which also involves his being abandoned at birth and being brought up by foster parents, poor fisher foster parents, and then being going back to his parents and his father, who's a king, and his mother, who's a queen, and then being reinstated as a king, who then journeys all over all the villages and towns of Kumaon, establishing courts and places of justice. But that's another story. And this, so to come back to what I told you about the petitions, this is now not in the temple of Ghoda Khal, but in Almora, in temple of Chittai, which is just outside, 10 kilometers, 5 or 10 kilometers or less outside Almora. And again, you can see here, literally, the hundreds of bells. Some of them are small, some are very large. There's a very large bell also that is positioned somewhere else. And in between the bells, the manoti or faryad, the petitions that are hung there. Literally hundreds of petitions. And I was able to, work and translate and look at a lot of these, hundreds of these petitions, that some of them are published in my book in translation. Most of them are in Hindi, but there's many petitions that are in English, or also in a combination of Hindi and English. And like I said, they address the deity. They sort of have this quasi, official language or structure to them, and with a witness at the end, some of them, and a kind of a devotional language. So it's a mixture of different kinds of languages that are being used here. Again, more petitions hung in between the bells in the Chittai temple. And this is, example of one of the minotis that, as you can see, it's on stamp paper. It's non-judicial stamp paper. And it's someone who is asking Goludevta, Ajay Kumar Jain, to be considered for the post of additional sessions judge in the Delhi High Court. So this person is actually petitioning Goludevta, who is the God of justice, to make this position free for him, to give him this position as an additional sessions judge in the Delhi High Court. This is a small petition which is about evicting someone who is encroaching, who is occupied. We don't know exactly what the story is, on somebody's land, someone called Lamba, and Urf Yadav, ko shigra nikal do. Or in the court case that is going on. So the appeal is to Goludevta to actually, to expedite, in a sense, the court case and have it go in the favor of the petitioner over here. Okay, this is just some examples of what the petitions deal with, or concerned with. And this is a petition which talks about someone's aspirations and maybe something that everyone, other people can also relate to. It says, I want to be a famous space scientist and I want to become slim. So again, a whole range of aspirations that people are dealing with. So I thought I'd maybe go into a little bit of detail, if I may, if there's time, into one petition which was written in Hindi that then I've translated it here. So I'll just read it out quickly, and of course we can discuss it because I can see time is moving fast. So this woman is saying, I was married according to proper rites and ceremonies to Narayan Singh. After my marriage, my husband gained service in the army. And because of this, because of his duties, he was unable to live at home. And he was unable to come home from time to time. But when he does come home, somehow his mind is confused and distressed. And she says this is because of account of a tantric who's put a spell on him. And when he comes home on furlough, he tells me to pack all my belongings and says, you have no place here, you have no authority here. He threatens me with all kinds of abusive language and also threatens to beat me up or kill me. And so this woman is saying that I've heard of you as someone who's there to provide justice in the world. And therefore, I'm placing this small request in your court that I should be given justice, and that the family, the brother-in-law, sister-in-law, and my husband, that they should return to being normal and, that we should have a peaceful and harmonious family situation. And this petition, in fact, echoes part of the story that is connected to Goludev's, life and deeds, which is the story of Bhagoli Mera. And this is, a beautiful story, which is very similar to the petition that we just, that I just read through. And so, and it's a longer story, and I, won't go into here. This is just the gist of it. And that she was a young woman belonging to the Mehra community that were, landowners in Kumaon and still are. And she belonged to Champawat, which was the birthplace of Goludev, which I showed on the slide, which is the district that is bordering on Nepal. That's Goludev's birthplace, and there's a temple commemorating his birthplace there. But after she was married, she lived near Khal. So that's where her in-laws were, Nainital, Mawali. And again, the story is one of which her in-laws used to abuse her. Her husband was, murdered by some marauding, gangsters who wanted to take over their property. And that she finally then appeals to Goludevta, and this is during Goludevta's, lifetime, to come and protect her. she goes to the Goludevta's court and is allowed in, and Goludevta speaks to her in a very poignant way and calls her sister and gets off his throne and comes down to see her. And then he sets off with his attendants and entourage from Champavat to Ghoda Khal, which is a long distance, and is able to subdue, all the people, this actually criminals who are harassing her, who have taken away her property, and the in-laws, and so on and so forth. And is able to control them and subdue them, and he controls them also with his own entourage, which consists of other masans. Masans are certain spirits, violent, aggressive, strong kind of spirits, Kalwa, Masan, and other members of his entourage. So he is so able to suppress, and ward off everyone who's troubling Bagoli Mera. And then after that, as he's about to leave, Bhagoli Mera, catches hold of him and insists that he stay here. He stay in Ghoda Khal. And this is basically the origin of the temple in Ghoda Khal, that Goludev has to stay here and cannot go back to Champavat. So, Goludevta, he agrees to stay in Ghoda Khal, and that's the origin of the temple in Ghoda Khal. So maybe it's time to show the video clip now. Let me see. I need to get out of this, and then can I come back to the?
Sure, you take your time. 45 minutes is just a limit, but you can go on. We are really enjoying this a lot.
All right. Okay, thank you. But I thought I could show you, and then I'll come back to the slides. So if I can, let me see how I work this now. Come show you part of a very small clip of a jagar. It's about 4 minutes. These jagars are long, an hour long, hour and a half, 2 hours long. So let me just try and share the screen now. Can you see the video now or not?
Yes, we can see it with the backdrop of your PowerPoint. So you can.
Now?
Yes, we can see. Yeah, very clear.
Okay, so as I was saying, the jagars can last an hour and a half and 2 hours, and they're very, very, very powerful, very intense rituals, if you like, an intense experience in which the deity is awakened. And the singers, as I said, and this is one of the singers that I work very closely with and I have great respect for, Nariram, are able to awaken the deity and also, able to direct the deity and have this, dialogue with the deity. So this, and sometimes, jagars, several jagars could happen over the period of one night, 2 or 3 jagars, that go on the whole night till dawn. And so this particular jagar that I was at was, which happened maybe at, I'm not sure anymore, maybe 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. in the morning, and it was deep down in a valley. So we walked there during nighttime, I think maybe using our cell phones, and through a forest till we reached the house of the host. And so this is just an excerpt from the jagar. And in the jagar, there's actually 2 deities who are embodied by the dangariyas or by the nachnewala. And I'll be showing you one nachnewala or dangariya who embodies Kalbisht or Kalyan Singh, as he's called, or Kalwa sometimes. Kalwa, Kalyan Singh, Kalbisht. And then the second part of the jagar, which I won't be showing you, Gangnath is embodied. And Gangnath, what's interesting about Gangnath, although he was a man, as you can tell from the name, who originated from Nepal. And again, it's a very tragic, it's both about, deep love between him and a woman who stays in Kumaon, but also about his and her own, particularly his, very violent, premature death. So Gangnath usually enters the body of women. So again, I have to say here, many boundaries are blurred, and we can talk about that. When in these jagas, and perhaps I'm telling you something that you already know, but in certain audiences, this is sort of interesting or surprising that it doesn't matter. So Devi can enter, of course, from the gender perspective, a man can embody Devi, or a woman can embody Gangnath or another so-called male deity. So there's a certain understanding of what the body is and who or what the individual is. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. This notion of the individual, which is again so central to what we call modernity, or ways of imagining human beings in the context of modernity. So we have something called an individual, and by and large, at least theoretically, an individual is someone who is bounded, who has certain boundaries. Individuals can't be this or that; they have to be something in particular. Just like nation states, you can't be this or that. You have to sort of choose what you are. So an individual is bounded. The body is something that is bounded. It's not permeable. Other forces can't enter it. Although if you think about it, we are all being impinged upon. In fact, all we are is a set of different, biological, sociological, political, cultural forces, all impinging on, well, not only impinging, actually creating who we are, at least in the context of the world of appearance, of what we're seeing. That is constituted by all these, forces that are swirling around us in a sense. So that, in fact, it becomes very hard to find the individual in all of that. But this is a very powerful notion. It's one of the more powerful ideas of what I would like to call, the ideology of modernity, the individual. So something like that, gets questioned, is being questioned, is being critiqued in an oblique way, through something like a jagar. Okay, so I'll play now. I'll play bits of the jagar to you. And so this is Nariram, is a jagariya. And then, so he's telling the story of Kalbisht. Okay, and so that story involves Kalbisht's movement from different places and what happens to him, and how he gets killed, and that kind of awakens, through also emotion, awakens the deity. Right, with that, so that was the, let me see if I can come back. Can you see the PowerPoint now?
Yes, we do see it.
Oh, it's gone back to the beginning. So just, giving you an idea of what, what the petitions look like and what they entail, just a small idea of what that is, and also what a jagger looks like, and also I've tried, to explain to you what happens in a jagger, or what the reason is for conducting a jagger, and who conducts it, and who's involved. There's a host family, there's a jagariya, Dangarya, and there's a dialogue. And usually, as I said, it's about uncovering or unconcealing something that is hidden in people's lives, that they don't understand. Why are they falling ill? Or why is something happening to them again and again? And I hope you can relate to that. I mean, I certainly can. This is not something that happens, in the hills or in some pre-modern society, as people tend to think. So again, to come back to the question, which I'm also asking in my book, is what does justice mean in this context? Clearly, it's something, at least on the surface, it looks very different perhaps to the kinds of, ideas of justice and also the practices of justice that most people perhaps listening to this presentation are familiar with. Going to a court, hiring a lawyer, looking at all the, the laws and the bylaws and the statutes, and speaking to a judge and so on. So whatever that is, whatever that complex is, seems to be different on the surface, may not be that different. So what, the petitions, then the, these jaggers, and then there are several other narratives, many that are oral that I've also collected, that talk about, justice and how it is resolved through Goludevji, particularly, or through Gangnath and Khal and the other deities that are mentioned. So what I'm suggesting, one of the things that I'm suggesting is that With justice and injustice here, perhaps everywhere, it encompasses the world of material objects, of desire, of struggle, aspiration, uncertainty, both the intangible and the tangible. And it's located in the world of the ordinary. So everyone is, in fact, all of us are located in the world of the ordinary, or the world of the everyday, if you like. But I think that the everyday itself requires tremendous attention and tremendous investigation. What exactly is that? And there's a kind of obviousness that we approach the everyday with, that we know things, we know what this is, we know who we are, we know what other people are for sure all the time. We know what's going to happen next. But in fact, we don't. But there is this kind of sort of, how shall I put it, a tranquilized approach that we have to the everyday, in which we consider the things around us in our everyday existence, when we get up and we have our routines and we go to work and we deal with this and so on and so forth, that's ordinary. And somehow then what escapes us is that this particular moment is in fact infused with the extraordinary. There is perhaps nothing outside of this that we can call extraordinary. So how does one actually, begin to experience and think and contextualize what we and I call ordinary or everyday, which in fact the everyday, and some anthropologists have said that it is in fact the everyday that requires most of our effort and most of our struggle, and that is not easy to, in a sense, deal with the everyday and the ordinary. So the location of what, Goludev's devotees, where they are and where you and I are in this space of the everyday and what we call the ordinary, what seems to be ordinary. What I'm suggesting, and also through the participation of, devotees in the temples and in the jagas, begin to participate and understand that the extraordinary is also right here and right now, and nowhere else. And as I said, the jagas particularly, but also the petitions are about unconcealing. The petitions are about surrender. The jagas are about unconcealing what is hidden, what is outside the horizon of our perspective, of our views, of our thinking, and finding fulfillment in things that perhaps, and we can talk about this, secular courts don't deal with. Usually, depending on how you want to define it, I wouldn't go to a secular court for something like happiness or prosperity or well-being or health, unless there's something involved, with a hospital or some sort of a medical misadventure and so on. So that here it seems like the idea of justice, moves towards more of a notion of, balance or harmony or well-being that one can expect as a human being, or that a human life can have these qualities. And maybe one last point, the kind of justice that we're looking at here is what is a sort of something that is grounded in, as I said already, in the everyday. And the everyday itself, I want to suggest, is actually resists, sort of grand structures and abstract notions that we talk about often. So again, many things we don't know what's going on. We don't know what other people's intentions are. We don't know what forces are operating on us culturally, psychologically, biologically, economically. So complex, so many configurations inside of which so-called individual operates. That the kind of justice you find here is something that is grounded and rooted in what's happening in the everyday. That is, it's not coming from an abstraction. So there are certain notions of justice. For example, John Rawls, sorry if this sounds very technical. John Rawls, creates the notion of an ideal society. An ideal society which operates out of certain norms, right? But here we find that it's not, the notion of justice is not operating out of norms, but it's operating out of what is being presented and what is occurring in the everyday, in the unpredictable and uncertain arena of the everyday. So therefore, justice is something that is fluid and needs to be, in a sense, invented and reinvented again and again, depending on what exactly is going on. And that's called, again, to use some technical words, it's called sort of realization focus, realization notion of justice. So let me see if there's another slide. No, that's it. So I think I should stop here now. Sonali, I've spoken for about an hour, and we can take questions. That's okay.
Wonderful. So at this point, maybe you can stop sharing your screen, and all of the participants can have their videos on. Thank you so much for that wonderful lecture. And it was such a amazing journey into Uttarakhand and Goludevji. And while I was watching it, I remembered that long back, I had gone to Nainital High Court for an appearance. Little did I know that, I was really fascinated that Almora is the Supreme Court, Nainital is the High Court, and Champawat is the District Court. And when you showed that, it was such a funny moment when he showed that Ajay Kumar Jain, I think I've appeared before him when he was a magistrate. And I just checked, he's the same person, and he's now handling the narcotics, drugs, and psychotropic substances court in Saket as an additional sessions judge. So I was wondering, do you follow the petitioners? Have you, in any of those letters, did you ever follow the petitioners into understanding about their psychology with regards to this, their petitions, and whether they ever come back, and the bills and all of that? I would love to know that.
Yeah, that's a great question. I've been asked that before, and maybe it's something that was perhaps a gap in my field work. But mostly, I encountered these petitions, as they were, in the temples. And yes, people's names are there. Sometimes it's not clear, maybe the city where they've come from, but exactly how to. I suppose it could have been done in some cases, to track down somebody and find out what exactly is happening, what the history of that particular petition is. But that's not something that I really went into. And I think the question behind that is, is Goludevji, maybe one of the things behind that is, is he actually efficacious? Does it really work out, right? That's what people want to know, right? That maybe that's what you want to know. So if I hang a petition there, is it work out? How do I know?
Well, I think it did work out for the additional sessions judge, but I
It
think
did
more
work.
so, yeah, but I think more so, I would be very interested to know the psychology of the people, and how widespread the whole culture of Goludevji is. You have somebody from Delhi who has no roots, perhaps he has no roots in Kumaon. I would like to know how this has spread, and just understanding their psyche into going to Goludevji, how is he so all pervasive?
Well, I mean, it is like I mentioned, see the example of this person, this man from Kerala who would, appeal to Goludevji. Kerala is obviously very far away from Uttarakhand, and people from Delhi or other parts of India and Kumaon. So how that exactly happens, that's again something which is difficult to trace, but there must be something going on, something authentic going on for people to actually be hearing about it, to be attracted towards it, to trust that this is going to actually work. Because in the end, I think that people are concerned about what's going to work in their lives. So, you're trying out people, you and I also do that, right? We try out different things. You maybe you go to one doctor and then, kuch nahi hua to ilaj nahi hua to let's go to another one. And somebody tells you, okay, this person's good, go there. Maybe do, some Ayurvedic course in Kerala. But, that's how I think people are operating. they're looking for example, also I said, on the jagar, this jagar which I showed you, it concerned, an old lady. She was very frail. She was sitting there also. She was part of the jagar, sitting in the other part of the room. And it centered around her because she was very ill, very frail, and no one knew, how long she was going to survive. And they done, like, intelligent, smart people like you and me, they did everything. They went to whatever this doctor, MRI, like I said, MRI, then something else, and nothing, it persisted, the condition persisted, right? So they tried out many things. So I think that, people are wanting to try things to see what's going to work when you're in a particular situation. So it's not just as, we tend to think, anthropologists talk about belief systems. Well, we're all in a belief system. And, I don't know who has knowledge and who doesn't have, who has beliefs, this kind of distinction. So it's not just necessarily belief systems, but it's out of a concern for what is going to work and what's going to then work for me or benefit me. So if that's a sort of a conversation, you can say, that has developed, around Goludevji, right? So people are wanting to see, and I think it's partly also in some of the petitions, it's also maybe cathartic also that you talk about things. For example, the petition about this woman who's talking about her husband abusing her. It's clearly not something you can share with other people. Who are you going to share this with? Maybe with some friends, women friends, but not in your family. So again, the temple and the deity are places of, of, like I said, of intimacy and being able to share something and providing a space. And of course, what's interesting is it's a kind of a public sharing of something that is very intimate.
And that's interesting. In Kullu Valley, you're talking about the woman not sharing about her husband beating, but it's on a petition. It's in the public sphere, but it's not shared by her family. But in Kullu, on the other hand, you see the girl coming into a trance and publicly addressing without fear of, any person. Like, it's almost like the village together knows exactly what's going on in the family, and it's so public. And when I witnessed it, I remember one of the deities possessed the girl, and he admonished one of the priest's son, who was also a priest. He came down to tears. He said, "You're womanizing, and this is not good." And he was like, "I'm so sorry." And we were all aghast when we heard it, that it was so public, and he was in tears, and he was trying to say sorry. So that is kind of a difference, right, between how it's done there. It's public yet private, and here it's so public. Yet private because it's the confines of a village.
Yeah, that's very good. Yeah, I mean, it is a public sharing. Now, who comes and sees that, encounters that particular petition amongst hundreds of them? But the jagars, certainly you could say they are public arenas. And although mostly family members are sitting there, but I was told that anyone can come and participate in this. And during a jagar, you see many things are being, brought out into the open. Things that you did in the past or didn't do that are now resulting in certain kinds of conditions. And all that is being brought out into the open. And it's not really about any kind of, punishment or retribution. It's about stating what there was. And that itself brings about a kind of at least one of the ways of resolving things.
Right. So let's take questions from our participants who have their hands raised. So we have Hemant Singh Bisht, who was the first to raise his hand, and I would request them to introduce themselves a bit before they ask their question. So Hemant, over to you.
Hello.
Can I see Hemant? Oh, okay.
Hello, sir.
Do you have your video on? No, it's fine. Whatever you want. Oh yeah.
Hello, sir. This is Hemant Singh from Mukteswar, Uttarakhand.
Oh, great. You're welcome.
So my question about the iconography of Goludevji. So why is considered as a child deity? his name is also Golu, which is just used in our region.
I think it's frozen or something. Was it Hemant?
I think he got frozen. So I hope you got his question. There he is again.
Yeah, I got. Okay. Was there anything else you wanted to say? I got part
Yes,
of
sir.
your.
Yes, sir. Also about the Jagar, I'm just indulged in these ceremonies and traditions from my birth. So I want to know, sir, how it works, because in almost all the cases, the problems of the villagers or the families or the individual have solved by their Jagar.
Mm-hmm.
And in almost all the cases, the problems is related to the ancestors.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
how does it works?
Okay. I mean, what my understanding is also tried to explain to some extent that participants in the Jagar, they're dealing with, as you must have also encountered, it's something that you can't fully understand or can't really resolve. Also, it might be related to some long-standing property issue or something related to one's own health or illness and so on. But one is not able to. They're not able to get behind what's the cause of that, right? So what is actually causing this particular situation? And after trying many things, then you want to find out. So I think the reason why then you see the devta is called, right? Devta or other devtas who have an insight or have a much greater knowledge, who have complete knowledge in a sense of what's happening in the background. For example, if it was the ancestors who did something. So the ancestors, at least in temporal terms, although they exist with us now, in temporal terms are, a generation or 2 generations or more behind us. So we're not always familiar with the actions that they undertook. But the deity has sort of access or reveals that, right? So I think it's the revealing of things, causes that are hidden, that is how the Jagar works. Okay. And the first question which you had about Goludevji, on being depicted, or the meaning also, often he's also depicted as a young man on a horse, right, which I showed you, at least one of the images on the wooden horse. But it has to do also with his the story, which concerns much of his childhood and how he was treated or mistreated during his childhood. You may know the story, how which is fascinating. I would have actually liked to spend the whole talk reading out the story, but maybe another time. So what happens when his mother is pregnant? There are 7 queens. She's the 8th and the youngest queen, and then there are 7 queens who are jealous because they've not been able to produce any offspring. Say, we'll look after her. And so they take her into an old dark house, and as she's about to give birth, they, it's very poignant, they blindfold her and they tie her legs and arms, in chains. And then they make a hole. Anyway, I won't go into the whole story. Make a hole in the upper level of the house. And so when Goludev is born, he slips into the lower level in which there's a cow shed. And they tell Goludevta's mother, Kalinga or Kalika, that you didn't give birth to a child, you gave birth to a silbata. Now, you know what a silbata is?
Yes, sir.
Huh? I hope everybody knows silbata, where grinding stone, okay? You gave birth, so they put this, inanimate, hard stone object in front of her and say, you gave birth to silbata, not to a child. But of course, she so adopts the silbata, in such a way that they become, like, later on Goludev's guardians. And then there's a whole series of what happens. They try to kill Goludevta, keep persisting, and then they put him in an iron box and throw him into a river, which is a recurring theme in many cultures, right? and then he's found by a fisher family. And then he asks for this wooden horse, for them to give them, him a wooden horse. So that's why you see in the temple, he's sitting on a wooden horse. The image is made out of wood. So I think there's a significance of Goludevta's childhood, and then later on, when he's still young, he returns then to his father's home and establishes himself as the son of Raja Jhalrai and Kalinga. Okay? I hope that answers your question somewhat.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Hemant. Let's take the next question. Ritu has a question. So Ritu, if you could introduce yourself, and then we can take your question. Is Ritu there? If not, we can take Anjuji, your question.
Yeah, hi, I'm here.
Oh, Ritu is there, yeah.
Yeah. Hello, Professor Malik. My compliments, first of all, for a wonderful session. In fact, my question is little in extension to Sonali's query. And just being a little inquisitive, what happens when their wishes or appeals, the faryad comes true? Are they supposed to follow a process to thank the deity? And if they're not able to thank the deity, are there any superstitions attached?
Yeah, there is a process to thank the deity, and I sort of mentioned, you see all the, one way is, of course, as you saw in the temples, also in Chittai and also in Ghoda, Khal, they're festooned with the brass bells. So that is something that you offer to the deity, once whatever you've asked for has been, resolved or accomplished. That's an offering that most people make, right, to the deity. Then, the other offering that is made, I was told in Ghoda Khal, is not made directly to Goludevta, but it's made to his, in a sense, his second in command, Kalwa Masan, okay, who's also located in the temple compound. So, Kalwa Masan, you offer or sacrifice goats. So part of the temple, even in Chittai and also in Ghoda Khal, is reserved for actually sacrificing goats. So devotees bring goats. If they've promised, that this is what I'll do, this is how I'm going to, express my gratitude or express my thanks to you, then that's what they do. You'll come with one goat or two goats, and these goats are then, slaughtered, right, in some part of the temple compound, and then different, based on certain rules, different parts of the goat's body are, distributed amongst, maybe the priest, and the family, and so on and so forth. And yes, one has to follow through this, otherwise, things can happen unexpectedly to oneself, if you not follow through. If I'm trying to recall, one of the stories, someone devotee then fell down, they broke a leg. So there's signs that start, happening or showing up that you've not followed through with what you promised to do. But I don't want to necessarily call them superstitions. I'm trying to get out saying that. It's, it's a different understanding of, how things work, causality, and for example. So definitely that's the bells that you saw, all the bells, in some in Chittai, there's a huge bell which you can't lift or anything, which is just placed on a cement, slab, and then the offering of goats, mainly of goats.
Great, thank you so much.
Welcome.
Thank you, Ritudi. Now we have Dr. Anju Khanna with her question.
Oh, I think you have to unmute. You have to unmute her.
Oh, I have to. Yeah, I thought she would do it, but she's not there. I can't see her. So we'll wait till she's there now.
There.
Yeah, she's there now. Okay.
Okay. Professor Malik, thank you so much for taking us on this lovely journey. I live in the hills of Talla Ramgarh. I'm part of the Aurobindo Ashram. And I've been working in the village there for about 15 years and very closely connected to the simplicity of these people. And what your book brought alive, your sharing brought alive today were two things. The phase of transition. There are the older people in the village with whom we work, and they believe in the simple faith and wisdom of not going to the courts, to also have that sense of catharsis and the realm of a larger fluidity that you spoke about. But also there is a huge notion now of these people being called the mad people, that इनको तो ऐसी बीमारी है, ये तो इनको तो ऐसा ही हो जाता है. So have you also worked on these kind of dichotomies between an age which is very simple, which believes in a larger wisdom, with faith, and also that faith that we can resolve it amongst ourselves rather than going to somebody who's a third party. So is that something also part of what you have felt there?
Yeah, thanks. That's a great question. And I think, this dichotomy, if you want to call it a dichotomy, and of course it's, it seems to be much more visible, today, this dichotomy. Again, I was talking about, I don't like using that, modernity or what is modern, that's sort of dichotomy that you're pointing towards. But I think that if we want to call it a dichotomy, or let's say that there's a certain quality or attitude of skepticism, okay, that has always existed. Okay, even if we look at, texts that were composed maybe 500, 600, 2,000 years ago, there's that element of skepticism that is that is part of the system. So no one is taking things on face value, even in a jagar, okay, or even in the context of this, the ritual that I was talking about. There are a whole series. There's a whole procedure of authentication, right? In that world, okay, there's a process of authentication. How do we know that? How does one know? How do I know? You could say, I'm whatever, this deity. I'm embodying Devi. How do I know? You could be just faking it, or it could be some other spirit that's entered you, in that realm, in the realm of that world, which may not be the one that you and I, or that some of us exist in. It needs to be authenticated. So there's a whole process of authentication. So within the system itself, I would like to call it, there's an element of skepticism or doubt or questioning. And that's existed for, whatever you want to call Indian civilization. It's been around that long, at least. Encountering everything that is, all kinds of ritual practice, all kinds of philosophical thought are encountered with some form of doubt or skepticism or questioning. And that persists. And it's persisting now. It has the garb, you could say, of rationality and reason, which is not to say that that hasn't been around in Indian cultural context before. It's been there always, right? The spirit of inquiry, investigation, questioning, doubting, so on, very fundamental ways. That is certainly something I encountered, let me give you an example, if I may, if it's not taking too much time. I was during Navratra, now which just passed Navratra, I was in the, Ghoda Khal temple. It was a very powerful experience. There was this young woman who came into the temple compound. She walked up the steps. There's a whole large series of steps before you come into the temple. And you could clearly see, and when she came in, and people were gathering around her, that she was somehow, as it turned out, she was embodying Devi, okay? She just came into the temple compound, and whatever the space, the power, or whatever the temple was, such that also during Navratra, okay, that she had become or was being, not sure what language to use, Devi. And some tremendous things happened. This very young woman, and she said some very powerful things. She actually criticized what the priests were doing. Priests who were much older than her, more established, had sort of positions in society which she didn't have, right? She was just this, I don't know how old, maybe 25, 24 years old, who came in and started speaking and questioning what they were doing. So she was actually questioning their, ritualized kind of, economically minded behavior, okay? Openly. And this was during Navrata, so there's hundreds of people. And she was saying, "Aap kya karte ho? Aapko ye bhi nahi pata hai, kaun devta hai, kya devta hai, aap kyun kar rahe ho? Aise nahi karte hain, waise karte hain." They had to, people were listening. But what was interesting right there, and I've written about this, was that one of the priests, one of the main priests whom I also worked a lot with, he was like, "Kya pata ye kya hai? Who knows? Who knows what this is?" He's saying it, okay? Not you or anybody else. He's saying from within that, context, he's saying, हो सकता है, नहीं भी हो सकता है, ऐसे ही कुछ है. Could be देवी हो सकती है, कुछ और भी हो सकता है, कुछ ऐसे ही ढोंग हो सकता है, कुछ पता नहीं. So I'd say, that what you're calling a dichotomy, that attitude of sort of doubting, of questioning, of having to authenticate, has always been there, okay, in all ritual performance. You have to establish, so the Dangariya has to establish themselves as someone. Anybody can't just go and sit on that gaddi. I hope that answers you a little bit.
Yes, it does. Thank you. Is it a family of people who become these Jangariyas?
No, not necessarily. It can be, handed down, but it's not necessary. There are many other stories of how the, Devta enters a person's life, through maybe points of crisis and so on, and certain signs that happen. You start to realize कि हाँ वो देवता हमारे शरीर में या हमारे घर में आ रहे हैं, like that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. And now let's have D. Arya with the question. If you could introduce yourself and then ask the question, that would be wonderful.
Thank you.
Did we just lose Sonali?
Yeah, we can hear you, but we can't see you.
Oh, okay, I thought.
Your image was frozen and we didn't hear who you're calling.
Yeah, that's why.
Sonali?
Okay, so I got a notification that my internet connection is a little unstable, so please bear with me, but please continue with your question. If there's any technical glitch, we'll kind of sort it out.
All right, who's asking the question?
Arya.
All right,
Okay.
Yeah.
That's me. Hi, my name is Devrat, and I'm currently partially involved in the humanities studies. My question is two-part. First question is also what Vibha asked in the chat messenger, like to be Jagariya or Dangariya and Sunkar, is there a particular clan for that, or is it voluntary? Or if it is voluntary, is there a learning curve behind this, like kind of an apprenticeship? And given on your answer, like if it is yes and no, like the second question is, like in New Delhi or in Haryana, we also have a culture of Jagrans. I think Jagar and Jagar have some kind of similarity in it, and we see that in Jagrans also, it's a common thing which happens, like somebody gets, like in Hindi we call it Mata Ana or Devi Charjana or something like that. Is there any similarities behind this, or is there any reasoning for this in particular? Because as a kid, I used to believe these are fake things, like how can this happen? But if I have to believe this is true or not true, how can we decide that this is some kind of really deity entry in it, or is it some kind of like a brain thing or like a medical reasoning behind it? And also, have you observed such kind of behavior or such kind of this deity thing in any other culture other than India?
Yes, great, very nice, good questions. Arya, is that right? Oh no, sorry, I didn't get your first name was?
That's fine. Arya is good.
No, this is what it's showing here right now.
Yeah.
Very good questions. Let me just start from the, the last bit of your question. You can keep your video on if you like.
Okay.
What is, now, for a long time, many years, decades, in fact, is called possession. And of course, it goes back much further, also to Christian, traditions in which, in fact, it has that kind of connotation coming out of a Christian tradition, this notion of possession, in which usually possession had to do with something demonic entering the body of a person, and it could be also, someone associated with the church and so on, and had to do with exorcism. So exorcism, what's called exorcism, that's like getting a spirit or a ghost out of someone's body. That's also something that is prevalent, let's say, in Uttarakhand, okay? So if if you start to show certain symptoms, or you're going, you're disoriented, and there's all forms of disorientation, also violent kind of disorientation, then you need to get that, whatever that spirit is, out of your system. And there's, in Rajasthan, for example, Balaji, which has hundreds of, you could say, patients who go there, with psychological conditions and so on. So let me just say, this is not confined to India. In fact, all cultures, and Sonali is working with what she calls shamans in Kulu, all cultures, whether that's in Africa or in Siberia, very famous, and that's where shamans, Native American cultures, everywhere you have this, the occurrence of human beings participating in other realms, okay, which becomes difficult, and that's why I talked about it briefly. See, the idea that you have, that you think, sorry if I can be a little bit, that you think is true, right? That you're this. Hang on a second. You think it's true about yourself. You're this name, and you have a history, and you're this body, and you have whatever resume, like we all do, right? That somehow this is the sum total of who you are, whatever your experiences and so on. And for many people, there's nothing else. For a lot of people, there's nothing else, because you're operating inside of a certain horizon, like I said, a certain horizon that occurs, okay? Why I'm saying occurs or appears as being true. It appears to be true. All right? Now, you can say it's true, but I'm saying, to actually sort of interrogate that, saying that it appears to be true, what you think about yourself. And what you think about yourself, and you and I think about ourselves, are some things that are inherited, right? They're inherited in the context of, the last couple of 100 years of how we start to think about what a human being is, okay? And a lot of this comes from, if I may say so, comes from European traditions, okay? The changes that happen. So even if you go back, a couple of 100 years in Europe, human beings were not considered to have what we call nowadays, called agency. Everybody's talking about agency. Rather, you were an instrument. You're an instrument. You're an instrument for something else to happen. And you still might be an instrument for something else to happen. Maybe something else is working through you. Okay, so when you talk about, Jagar, or whatever you also encountered when you were young, and this happens also in Vaishno Devi temple, in the Jagran, right? A lot of women, they got to embody the, Devi, but it's all over India. I could say that this is one of the most, widely spread ways of connecting or relating or becoming the divine in India. You know, it's everywhere. You go to Rajasthan, you go to Maharashtra, you go to Tamil Nadu, you go to Bengal, you go to Assam. It's everywhere. You know, that these sort of what we call ritual practices exist, and there are kind of immediate. It's an immediate, you know, virtually immediate way of, you know, sourcing, whatever you like to say. Hard to again say, you know, in our modern kind of language, how to understand this, because the implication is that you're not a bounded entity. You're not a bounded entity, okay? Rather, you're something that is permeable. And I've just been, you know, contributor to a volume, I think, of very innovative essays that has been published in Berlin, which is about, and I don't particularly like the term, about individuality, okay? That is the notion that human beings are fundamentally relational. So who you can understand yourself to be and who you are is relational. It's not just located here and never was, okay? Can't be found here. Can't be found in the kind of isolated narrative about yourself. It is found, you know, in relationship to your parents, to your colleagues, to your past, to your thoughts, all that. And here, it's found in relationship to, you know, to divinity. And that shouldn't be something surprising, you know, in a culture like India, because that distinction between what is considered to be divine and what is human is not made. Ultimately, you are divine. Okay, you can find that in all kinds of texts. You can find that, you know, everywhere, everyone is, it's sort of, you know, a lot of it is in the air, although, you know, like Anju was saying, things are changing, right? So now to come back to, I don't know, there was another question. I don't know, I hope this is not too long, my answers, okay? That about this true and false, right?
Yeah, if there is any education involved, or is it some kind of a clan, or that if everybody or anybody could have it?
Yeah, there is a kind of education, or there can be a kind of apprenticeship or a learning, you know, with another, you know, a Jagaria has to learn that, or Dangaria has to, you know, develop. And there's very elaborate kind of a process in becoming that, in becoming, so to speak, designated. So that the minute you sit on the gaddi, you know, you're already the deity, okay? So the distinction between you, what you call you, which consists of memory, okay? So if I, you know, extract that memory from you, then, you know, I don't know, who am I, right? That's giving you a sense of this identity or some continuity in what you call your identity, okay? But here you see there's a notion of the body, and that's found in many, you know, other, you know, performance traditions, that the body is it's like a vessel, okay? So the idea here is also that the deity rides on you. आप घोड़े की तरह हैं, छोटा घोड़ा, आपके पीठ पे है, and, you know, makes you do things, because to operate, to act inside of this space and time, you need some kind of materiality, okay? Need some material substance. So how am I going to do that? Well, I have to catch hold of a body. But the body is not the instrument. No, the body is the instrument, okay? The body, you have to understand, it's like an instrument. But who is playing the body, if you want to take that metaphor of the instrument, is something else. Get that?
Yeah.
So I don't think we should think in terms of, you know, true and false, because you're thinking, you know, you're all of us are occupying what seems to be disparate worlds, but actually they're shared, but they are worlds. So what seems to be true for you, you know, may not be the same for somebody else. And you can't ultimately say, you know, this is what's true, because it's appearing to be as true. And in that world, it has, you know, its own place and its legitimation and justification, and it works.
Okay.
Long answer to your question.
There are so many follow-up questions to that, but I don't think we have time for it over here. But thanks for your answers. I appreciate it.
Yeah, great.
Following that question, actually, I have a question, and then I'll take the next question. I'm taking the liberty of being the moderator and, you know, butting in with my question. But so where you were talking about body as an instrument, what about the ritualistic tools? Like, for example, in Kulu, we see the incense stick, you know, the incense, the Google, becomes it becomes a part of the process. The crescendo, the change of the beats of the nagaras, they kind of induce the person to go into a trance. And when you were showing the video, I saw the use of the rope, the damru, and all of that were helping the dangaria, right, the dancer, to get to that alternate dimension. So do you see that? Is it same for all of them? Is that process the same for all of them? What are the variants? You know, like I wanted to know a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's good question, Sonali. And again, it's as you were talking, I was thinking how we so we're trying to explain something, right, that we're encountering that doesn't maybe doesn't necessarily fit into one's own experience. You try to explain it through a kind of a linear, somewhat linear framework. Okay, so you have this, and then that produces this, and that obviously that is contributing to. But one of the things that I found that I was told was that and whatever you want to call other dimension and so on, that's again how we're caught up in language. Okay, so if I were to tell you you're already divine, then there's no other dimension to catch up with, right? It's just to put aside something so that can actually work through you. There's no other dimension to catch up with. It's only about unveiling something, right? So there's a veil, there's something concealing that's being concealed, that once you take that away, you're that. There's no catching up. You're already that, right? Okay, so but that's hard for us because our language and our understanding of ourselves is so entwined with this. I have to get into some other state, or I have to become anyway. But the thing was that the Dangaria and Jagaria also told me that there's the gaddi. Now the gaddi just consists of it's like a flat, mostly a chattai piece of cloth, or maybe a very thin gaddi on the ground. That the second the Dangaria sits on that, he's already the deity. There's no getting to any state. It's instantaneous. Now it may not look like that. Okay, it looked like the Jagaria was sort of driving him on through the singing, and there is that element when we listen to the music and the drumming and the Khal, right? Very powerful, very intense. And when I went to many jagas, didn't know when it was going. I have to sort of stay down, stay grounded. Otherwise, it's such an intense atmosphere. So what does that mean? If we take that statement that Dangaria says, the instant I'm sitting on the gaddi, I am the deity. There's no, I'm not becoming it or anything. I am that already, right? And then maybe there's whatever happens through the telling of the story, there's a kind of josh, right? It creates josh or a sense of, josh or anger, or, remembering what happened, in the past in the deity's life and the injustice and so on, that spurs on the deity. But if we take that seriously, say you just sit on the gaddi, you're already the deity. So it's not a linear kind of a process. Okay. So was that all, or was there some other element? I don't remember.
That was it. But if I have more questions, I'll kind of address them to you individually later. We have Vijay Lakshmi Bose, who has the next question. And then we have KK. I hope you can take a few more questions and we are not tiring you out.
No. Not at all.
Yeah. So Vijay Lakshmi Bose, and thanks so much for answering to my earlier question.
Mm-hmm.
Vijay Lakshmi Bose, are you there? If you are, please take on the mic. Is she there? Let me just check. She's there, okay, but she's muted. I'll unmute her. I've unmuted you, and you can ask your question now.
No, video is not turned on, I think.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
This is Vijayalakshmi. First of all, just to say that yes, I have seen this kind of possession in a very informal reception, wedding reception, where there was a possession by a woman, and I've seen this also in my fieldwork in West Bengal many, many years ago. But to ask you a question, you started with the whole idea of justice. And then you went on to talk about illnesses and sicknesses and disease. So I was wondering what the relationship was, because there is a study of illness as a violation of the human body, or disease as a violation of the human body in the study of anthropology of diseases. So I was wondering whether there was this kind of connect in your work or something else that I didn't catch.
Yeah, thanks. That's a really great question. Yeah, I think I'm trying to show that there is a connection. Whether we want to see disease as a violation of the self or the human body, that can be done as well. But certainly that there's a connection between well-being and wholeness and integrity and the notion of justice that I think that emerges. See, nobody's saying this is, do field work. There's no book. See, there's no Dharma Shastra, or there's no John Rawls or Amartya Sen who's saying this is what justice is. It's not coming out of at least it's not coming out of an explicit, conceptual or written kind of framework, right? But so you have to sort of see what is emerging out of that, and how, and if possible, it connects to, perhaps conceptual ideas of justice that already exist out there, either in scholarship or in other forms of documentation. So to me, what seems to emerge is that it is connected, or the kind of nyāy or justice that people are seeking, or that they implicitly think this is what it means, has to do with things like disease, illness and recovery, and regaining a sense of wholeness and integrity. And I think that's very crucial. And integrity, if I can say, integrity, that is the condition of being whole and complete. Not not in the sense of morality that is usually used, integrity. And being able to be truthful or tell the truth. That's again very, very, very central, I think, to the way in which Goludevji and other nyāyakari devtas, particularly Goludevji, operates. So you have to sort of have a kind of integrity if you want things to work. And the temple is a space of that sort of, of this necessity to be truthful and tell the truth. Because if you don't, that gets revealed immediately, or that has certain effects, like, forgetting who was asking, maybe, I think Vibha was asking somebody about, what happens if you don't fulfill on certain things. But also if you're untruthful, or if you steal something, or if you lie in the sort of the physical space of the temple, then that also has consequences. And there's stories about that. If you've cheated, you've done something, or if you come into the temple, with that intention, or you've done something beforehand, all that gets, revealed. Goludevji will do something, or will appear in your dream, or he'll tell you to, there's some stories about how somebody supposedly mistakenly just picked up a bell and walked out of the temple, not theirs. So then, how Goludevji appears in their dream and, admonishes them, you have to go back and reinstate it. So I hope I'm answering your question. I'm trying to see that there is this link in the kind of understanding of justice as it emerges, because it's emerging, right? It's not that it's conceptually being stated. And this is what Amartya Sen also talks about. You see, realization focused and arrangement focused. So the arrangement focus being more the sense of an ideal society based on rules and everything is working accordingly. Whereas the realization focused notion of justice is, it's justice as it emerges in your everyday context. How do you, in a sense, act and improvise based on what's presenting itself in front of you. I don't know if that somewhat.
Yeah, that does answer my question. Very well, in fact, very comprehensively. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Vijayalakshmi ji. And let's have the next question. I think it's Kalandi. Kalandi, if you could lower your hand and give a brief description about yourself.
Am I audible?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great. Hi. Thanks, Sonali, and good evening, Professor Malik. I've read your book and it's brilliant. In fact, it was actually I happened to come across it after my fieldwork in Uttarakhand, which was also partly based on Kokila Devi. So she is the goddess of justice in Pakhu and around the areas of Bageshwar and Pithoragarh. So I had a question on methodology. So after I read your book, I happened to go back, and because every time you go to the Kokila Devi Mandir, you have this avatar of Goludevji, and a space is reserved for him, and the sacrifice is actually done before the Goludevji Mandir because the goddess is vegetarian. And in your book, and from what I know of the Chitai Mandir, the sacrifices, of course, their Goludevji is believed to be vegetarian. So I was interested in knowing, what is the relation here, and so I was explained that he's the Senapati, and he is in one of his avatars. Now, the methodology question is, how did you go about gathering the story of Goludevji or of Gangnath or of any of these other deities? Because there are a lot of oral narratives about who they are, what is their role in this entire framework of justice delivery, if I might call it, and where they originate from and things like that, especially how these temples came about and things like that. So how did you gather the stories, and how did you arrive at one concrete story? Did you just rely on written literature, or did you also combine oral and written? That would be my question.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that question. And that's very interesting what you say about Goludevji being Senapati of Kokila Devi. Because there's obviously different ways in which in different areas, different geographical regions, and depending on who the deity is, who's the primary deity, who becomes then, in a sense, subordinate or associate, a deity. That's something. So that's really fascinating to hear about that. And also the vegetarian, the non-vegetarian aspects that you're talking about, because they also get switched, or there's a kind of, I want to use that word, evolution also, right? So when I was working in the Ghoda cart, and I'll come back to your other question in a minute, Ghoda cart temple, then, I was told that initially, the sacrifice was done, right next to the shrine, which I showed you, which is sitting on a horse. But then that gradually gets separated. And then, you think of if one can, as twinning that happens. Okay, so there's Goludevji, who is, the vegetarian deity, and vegetarian offerings are made. And then there's Kalwa Masan, who is then the more, who likes getting offerings of, alcohol and bidis and meat and, all this kind of thing, khichdi, and the offerings are put in, black cloth and given to him. But one can also look at, the dynamics, like I'm saying, the sort of twinning of how a deity, they're not necessarily separate deities, okay? Aspects of the same, this so-called non-veg and veg, which we encounter, in so many contexts, right? So Kalwa Masan, for example, Goludevji, he's the king. So he doesn't go out and do things, right? So if there's some, let's say, messy business, you send out, your henchmen to do it, to resolve issues, okay? So that's sort of Kalwa Masan's, role in a sense. But you can say that these are, if one wants to analyze and look at things in a certain way, then that there's a kind of twinning going on. You see the aspect of the same powerful deity or being. And there's many, there's a lot of fieldwork and a lot of literature on that. And I think one good, and I hope other people must have read this, I'm sure Molly is familiar with it, and Professor Molly Kaushal and Dr. Anjali Kapla, this edited volume by Alf Hiltebeitel, you might have heard of him. He's a professor who teaches in Washington, D.C. It's called, forgetting what it's called right now, but I think it's called something to do with, well, it's about deities and demons, okay, and how I have to look up. Let me just see if I can find it. And let me see if I can find the title, but it's a very, very comprehensive volume on how these, how this sort of twinning happens, and how there's always this. Also, for example, in Tamil Nadu, where there's temples of Draupadi, there are these two other, guardians, okay, who are demons. But the guardians, in a sense, are like are absorbing whatever, elements that are impure, in a sense, okay. So we have also this idea of what is pure and what is impure. So the guardians are sort of on the periphery of Draupadi temples, and Draupadi is in the middle, but the guardians are very important to sort of absorb, and the offerings they get are also considered to be, not sattvic but tamasic offerings. Okay? I can't remember the title of the book. Anyway, the editor is Alf Hiltebeitel. So the other part was how do I go about gathering the oral narratives?
Yeah, like how do you decide this is the story, like the story to be narrated?
That I haven't decided, and I don't want to say that this is the story, because again, depending on where you are and who you speak to, there's always some other elements, and this always happens. And also I've done a lot of my field work in Rajasthan on stories that are much longer, oral epics, that 45 hours, 50 hours long, extremely long and complex narratives, in which, just like everyone else, even you, those of you who are scholars, you see you're contesting things all the time, right? That's part of your trade.
Yeah.
No, this is not right. No, this is how you should look at it. No, that's not right. Did you read this? So I encountered debates like this amongst the singers of the story that I worked on in Rajasthan, which is this epic of Devnarayan. Okay, so different singers, when they get together, and in fact there are these kind of like you go to the Jaipur Literary Festival, the Bhopaji, they have their own gatherings in which you debate, nahi, wo to, that's not how it was, this is how it happened, and why didn't you include this? And people who are listening are also saying it during the time of the telling of the story, ki, that's not what I've heard, why didn't you see? So the authority in the sense of the singers, in that case of Bhopas, are they're questioned. Okay, मैं जब वहाँ गया था तब ये बात सुनी थी. So there's no, and we shouldn't get into that at all, as scholars or people doing research, into getting into providing some singular, narrative, right? Like also, and other people here much more, sort of immersed in this, you talk about the Ramayana and Mahabharata, the Sanskrit versions, right? And they've sort of taken over in a sense. It's become like someone says, like a totalizing discourse, okay? Valmiki Ramayana and the Mahabharata, these are, but as we all know, there are so many different, local and regional tellings. Many people don't even know, the Mahabharata, the way it's understood and performed in Tamil Nadu or in, in Garhwal, right? that doesn't get into mainstream thinking. So there's this tendency to say, well, this is the authoritative version, but I'm not interested in that. So, and I haven't done that. Let me tell you one thing interesting is that, and this, I think Anju was saying, Talla Ramgarh, one of the first singers that I worked with was from Talla Ramgarh, which is near Mukteshwar. And, we was, walking together, we were walking up the hill. Or I sat down with him and I asked him, I said, can you tell me, I wanted to write it down, can you tell me, story of Goludevji? So guess what he said? He said, I don't know the story. He said, I don't know the story because whatever that story or narrative is, that emerges during the Jagar. See, and again, we encounter these notions of, how you think about memory and where knowledge is stored, right? You think knowledge is stored in memory. But when you do this kind of fieldwork, and also that I did in Rajasthan, no one's talking about their personal memory here. No one's saying I have to remember the story. See, the story, and this is what it is with oral traditions, is that it's all emergent. It's only existing in the present moment. It doesn't have any existence anywhere else. And, it's only speculation to think that it's in somebody's head. It's not. Or that it's being remembered, out of someone's personal memory. Yes, it may be remembered, but in the sense of joining oneself or reconnecting to a certain source from which this flows. So I found this, really, really interesting because it encapsulates what the meaning is of, an oral narrative or oral tradition. For him to say, when we're sitting down outside that context, I don't know what the story is. Although for years, we'd say, aap to jagariya kitne saalon se, 10, 20, 15 saal se aap kar rahe ho. You don't know the story? I don't know the story. Because it just, and I'm not saying this is all the case with everybody, but it suggests something, that kind of knowledge is emergent in a particular context. Okay? So anyway, I worked with different singers and whatever. That's all.
Yeah. Thanks a lot.
I'm off track.
Thanks, Kalinga.
Right.
Sorry. Were you saying something, Professor Malik?
No, I was just saying, go on, or should we wind up?
The Zoom session will end at 6:15, so we have one hand raised. But I do want to ask Kalinga, maybe in the future, Kalinga can give a talk on Kokila Devi, because that will be a very female perspective of, the goddess of justice, contrasted with the god of justice. So, Kalinga, do you hear me?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I didn't do as much work on, I did a lot of work on how the process functions. So I did a lot with these petitioners who come to her and what they are expecting out of this system of justice as compared to going to secular courts. So since I work on law and society, I was interested in the petitioner's perspective in approaching this forum, so to speak. So yeah, I'll be happy to participate whenever.
Okay. Thanks, Kalinga. And let's take Navnath or Navni's question. That will be the last question, and then I'll make an announcement, and then we can disperse for our Sunday evening, late evening.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello?
Yeah. Evening.
I'm laudable.
Yeah, you're audible.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello? Hello?
We can hear you clearly. We can hear you clearly, so you can just ask the question.
I'm asking about Jagar related in Marathi, in equivalent to Jagran. It's reflect on goddess for in villages to compare to this your Uttarakhandi Jagar. but I doesn't understand your this song's meaning, but I am just that lyrical music I am little bit understand. Hello?
Yeah.
आपका जो प्रश्न है वो क्या महाराष्ट्र में कोई है जिसके साथ आप कंपेयर कर रहे हैं गोलू देवता को?
या एक्चुअली जो महाराष्ट्र में एक जागर होता है, जागर एक्चुअली इन मराठी songs in jagaran that offering for goddess, some marriage and some rituals program that function will be organized. Then that's why I'm compare two things I known about little bit. This is a linguistic problem, but actually some rhythm rhyme that sing jagran is, I feel equivalent.
Okay.
And
All right.
question jagran, right?
Yeah.
In marriage.
Yeah.
So it's saying what I understood is that it's saying that although not understanding the language of the jagar, at least the rhythm and the music seems to be similar in the case of in the case of this Devi Jagaran in Maharashtra, right? And so, and certainly it exists, and certainly you find this also in Maharashtra. If you look at, for example, one of the main deities in Maharashtra, Khandoba, whose main temple is in Jejuri, right, in Satara district. So there also during the Somvati Amavasya, in which the Khandoba is taken out with to the Khara river, and this represents many things of going into the forest and finding Banai, right, the shepherd queen. During the Somvati Amavasya also, there are there are many things that happen. There are devotees who like Vagyas. Vagyas are in the sense they are the dogs. So the Khandoba is like a king, like Goludevji, riding a horse, and he goes on a hunt. So he has dogs also. So there's an extreme form of devotion like Ugra Bhakti that certain devotees represent his hunting dogs. So they embody that, right? And then other people are that. So there's many things you must be familiar with that are happening there. And Gunta Zontheimer, who was my PhD supervisor, has written an amazing amount, tremendous research on this. He spoke Marathi fluent.
Actually, sir, only not Satara, only this Khandoba. Actually, accurate. You are interpret accuracy. I am not that historical student, but I am a literature student. That's why I am little bit. But actually, our area is village to village. That Jagar function is organized by some people healthy. Some people for superstitious condition. Some people are our village health and good wealth. That they favoring good health and good wealth. Each and every village is one of Khandoba temple and one of goddesses. That two these are big goddess, and that's why each and every after Somoti Amosha and after some Chaitra Purnima, that function is depend upon village deity. They organize conduct in for the sense of equality, brotherhood, good for some moral code of conduct purpose.
Right. Very nice. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Navnath. And we have paucity of time. So Khyati had something very interesting to say. So Khyati, if you can keep it within a minute, we'll take your question.
Who's it?
Khyati Joshi. She had something interesting to say about some migration.
झालं आता संपलं आता दुसरं अजून चालू
Talking in Marathi.
Yeah, I was trying to unmute Khyati, but I don't know. But Khyati, I'm going to take your question. So she says that there's a community in Kumaon that has migrated from Maharashtra. So,
Absolutely, that's so. In fact, the priest, your Khyati Joshi, the priest, in Chittai, and the temple in Chittai, told me that originally they came from Maharashtra. That the priest, Goludevji's priest, came from Maharashtra, and they brought their. So there's a lot of migration that has happened, in this cultural region called India. Okay. That we may or may not be familiar with. So they came from Maharashtra with their deity. Okay, and then because they were traveling and it's a journey, and at some point they set down the deity. They're carrying the deity maybe on their shoulders, maybe in a kind of a palki, palanquin like they do, and then they set down the deity, and then they wanted to move on and couldn't lift the deity, right? Couldn't lift the deity because the deity had decided that this is where I want to reside. And that's how then the temple of, Chittai was then made. And that's how it became the place of Goludevji, Sthan.
Interesting. How interesting. And here I'm learning that there's some deities in Kullu Valley who come from China. And I just learned today that one deity came from Kerala. So it's very fascinating. And we just have 2 minutes. So I do want to thank you so much for this wonderful lecture and on possession, on the fragmented mind and dimensions and all of that. It's so interesting. And I really hope that in the future, neuroscientists and anthropologists and historians will all work together to unravel the mind. And I do want to thank all of the audience. As stayed, we've been here for a long time now, and thank you so much for answering the questions so patiently. I do want to make an announcement that next week we will have Dr. Malik talk about a Lord in love, and who else could it be but Shiva among the Gaddi of Himachal Pradesh. So we have that coming next week. Really looking forward to that. And those of you who want to stay in the group, please do. Who want to leave, we'll be sad, but please join us whenever you wish to. Watch out for our space on Facebook, Himalayan Institute of Cultural and Heritage Studies. And please interact with one another. You have questions, please approach the professors directly, individually. And thank you so much. And I do want to say that one of my friends who's a pilot in ATR, he messaged me, he said, Sonali, I also sent a petition to the temple of Chittai. I said, you did? What did you want? Please tell us about the petitioner's perspective. He said, I will someday. So he sent me some photos. I'll kind of post them on the group. And with that, have a lovely evening. Thank you, Professor Malik. And I hope you keep on in the group. And, we really want this exchange to go on and, be engaged with you all for wisdom. Thank you and have a lovely Sunday.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Shana. Thank you for the wonderful session. Thank you, Aditya. It was absolutely fabulous, really. Thank you, Aditya.
Thanks to everybody.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Aditya. It was wonderful.
And I will upload the 2 talks this week and last week. I'm sorry I haven't been I haven't updated you all with all of that. I will do that. This week for sure, both the talks will go online. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks everyone for your questions and being patient.
Thank you. Thank you.
Enjoyed it.
Thank you. Thanks, Sonali, again. Thank you.
Hi, Vibha. Lovely to see you.
Hello. Yes. After ages, but I enjoyed your talk also, Kapila. And I
Thank
was
you
so
so
happy that it was not recorded because I wanted to share it with some others who missed it. But anyways.
We will be
Okay.
posting the narrative that has been very kindly written by Dr. Anju Khanna. So I'm the culprit. So I will.
Yeah, no, we were just thinking that Molly could have recorded it. You know? Yeah. Anyway, Molly, great. I shall hear you. And maybe after that you can get Karin also.
And maybe you should also join in you should also deliver a lecture. I was just listening to your comments and all, and you have worked with
Shamanism, Mangamis. Yeah.
You work with the
Yeah,
Nagas.
surely. Yeah.
I worked with
Of the
Nagas of the Northeast, not the snakes. Otherwise.
I was working in Borneo with the Iban people, and I was trying to.
Okay, yeah. They always compared for the headhunting.
It would be because Himalayas, the Northeast are the Himalayas as well, so you need to come on board too.
Can we keep a record of the questions in the question and answer box? Is that possible?
I will email it to you.
All right, because there's a lot of good.
I'll email you the text. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Enjoy your evening.
Bye.